that Manchester United are searching for a new manager.
New manager.
They played in some competition called the League Cup last night, I believe.
Yeah.
They beat Leicester 5-2 with Ruud van Nistelrooy on the
was
bench.
very happy to be there on the bench. You could tell of him. Very
Yeah,
happy.
I love him. Well, it's a matter of taste, I guess. But I think the news is they seem to have locked on to Ruben Amiron as a sporting coach. There's some background here. He apparently has a 10 million euro release clause for select elite clubs around Europe. But there's a notice period involved. I spoke to Mark Ogden this morning. He said, I don't think he's coming until, his first game won't be after the November international break. So let's break this down a little bit. I'm guessing that if they move so quickly from Amorim, A, they must have known about the release clause, but B, they were obviously talking to him for several weeks, which makes the whole lies and fairy tales comment from Ten Hag even more absurd. What do we think?
In terms of, is he a good choice, you mean?
Does the fit make sense?
I mean, for me, the biggest question mark is, and we've seen that even with Ten Hag to some extent, is managers moving straight from a smaller league, let's put it that way, like Portugal or the Netherlands, to the Premier League straight away, and to a club like Manchester United that needs a lot of work to do, where you have so much more pressure than in your former club. And I'm not sure if he's ready. He was great for Sporting Club de Portugal. He's a very, very good young coach with great ideas. They play great football. He's quite dogmatic. He speaks really well. He speaks really good English. He even studied in England. So the language barrier, there won't be one. It would be he's good with media. He's good with everyone. He's got so much charisma. He's got everything, really. The only thing for me, even beyond he does his 3-4-2-1 system works with this United squad, that's another discussion, I guess. But the one is really, can he step up? It's as simple as that.
2 league titles in 4 years at Sporting Lisbon. I think he also won 2 cups as well. And Sporting Lisbon, again, traditionally the third force in Portuguese football, also lost some players over those 4 years, which shows that he can adapt on the fly. And I think this is a big part of the reason why they're turning to him. There's a whole other question, though, about, and I think people might use this to troll. Obviously, in the summer, he spoke to West Ham.
Yeah.
Liverpool considered him before turning to Arne Slot. Is this significant at all, or are these people just being negative when they point this out?
No, I think Liverpool were put off by his dogmatic style in the back three that they didn't really want, I think. For West Ham, I'm not really sure what happened, if it's him who changed his mind, if it's them, if they didn't want to pay the release clause, maybe.
If they like Julian Lopetegui more?
Maybe they like Lopetegui more, you're right. I don't know, because the question, and we took on FC about it the other day, is why no other big clubs came for him before United,
Because he's 39 years old.
Yeah, but he's been very good for a while now for Sporting Club.
I mean, I think the reason no other clubs came for him is that ultimately it is a leap of faith. If we're talking about elite clubs, right? I mean, and if you look sort of top 10, 12 clubs in Europe, which is obviously where Manchester United are, we're not talking about Ajax hiring Farioli here, right?
But Bayern,
we're talking,
for example, Bayern could have gone for him instead of Company.
After 10 different coaches turned them down,
but
they went for Company. I don't think Bayern wanted to pay a 10 million euro release clause.
Yeah, maybe
I think that's a big part of it. We're going to break Amorim down a little bit further, talk a little bit about what they might do. I think we also need to talk about the payoff for Erik ten Hag. It's 13 million, which I find absolutely extraordinary, right? It's around about 15 million euros.
Yeah.
And this is because they extended his contract in June, right? Because he would have had a year left.
Yeah.
He does not make 15 million a year. So it's not like it's a year's wages.
No.
Can you wrap your head around this? And now it's the grown-ups are in the room.
When he was announced, remember we tried to work out maybe there was something financially for his wages of a longer period, maybe to earn less or something like that. But
I mean, there is an issue. He did take a pay cut with the extension or whatever, but I find this extraordinary. Yeah. Jules, I suspect we won't be speaking about Erik ten Hag for a while. No. So this
he didn't say goodbye. Because the players had the day off, so there was only a couple of them, I think, at Carrington. So he left. I mean, I guess he didn't have to leave so quickly. He left on Monday afternoon.
They reportedly they arranged a private jet to take him back to Amsterdam,
But
which
like, if you want to stay a bit longer in Manchester, you can say like, I don't want to go back now. I can stay. And
I think he wanted to be back in time for the big Feyenoord against Ajax Klassieker. How about that? No. And by the way, shout out to Ajax. Who won that game?
Who won?
I find this whole thing odd. In the sense that obviously it was coming for a very, very long time. It's funny because a lot of the coverage that I read made it a point to say that, well, Omar Barada and Dan Ashworth weren't at the club when it was decided to extend Ten Hag's contract in the summer. I'm kind of like, really? Maybe they weren't formally employed by the club, and obviously they don't want to violate the rule of their contract.
Yeah.
But I 1,000% refuse to believe that Jim Ratcliffe, his friend Brailsford and whatever, all these guys decide, hey, let's commit another 2 years to Eric Ten Hag because we don't like the alternatives, without consulting Barada and Ashworth, right? You don't have to put it on paper. You can use carrier pigeons. Guys, what do you think?
I know.
Nobody believes this. You don't believe this, do you?
No. I know all the managers they met in the summer. There's no way Barada and Ashworth were not either involved in those talks, in the meetings, or certainly aware that, hey, we're going to speak to Tuchel, we're going to speak to Thomas Frank, we're going to speak to so and so.
I mean, I think being directly involved, because obviously they've got a compensation claim with Ashworth. They would have had, I guess Barada would have been on gardening leave from Manchester City, and you don't want to risk any legal issues there, especially because Manchester City, as we know, have some very aggressive lawyers. But so maybe in terms of a face-to-face meeting, somebody can snap a picture. No, that would not be good, right? But yeah, there's no question to me that I just refuse to believe that they weren't part of the conversation.
No.
And what surprises me here is, and I want to spin it over to Ratcliffe. Okay, so the clock is ticking on him, right? Because he has a time window where he's in charge of the sporting side of the club. He has tried to aggressively cut costs, the 250 people laid off, the no more £2 million a year for Sir Alex, and so on.
So they saved around 30 million. This whole thing is costing them 25. So all the cost cutting that they've made.
I was curious about that 30 million because one of there's a guy I follow on social media who has worked. He's sort of into the accountant business types guy, Stefan. He disputes that 30 million number.
So it's probably less. You mean?
Yeah.
Right,
just simply because those 250 people that they fired, it's not like it's 250 Harry Maguires.
Yeah,
it's,
true.
Although obviously they would have saved themselves quite a bit of money on Sir Alex. For somebody who's so careful with money, it seems, and who says, we want to reinvest every penny in the squad, it's an interesting situation. And I'm wondering about this from the Glazers' perspective, right? Because for every 10 million that Manchester United spend, the Glazers have to put in about 7.3 million of that, right? Any losses that they make, the Glazers are funding those losses, beyond, obviously they got money when he bought his share of the club. So I think they'll be watching this very, very carefully. He's decided to go and pay a bunch of high-priced executives, in the guys we mentioned, Ashworth, Barada, Jean-Claude Blanc, Wilcox. I'm assuming Brailsford is doing the job for free because he gets enough money from Ineos already.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I know we've been critical and stuff, but this is the right choice. This is, finally, you have to have people who work at a club who make football decisions for the medium-term good of the club. Yeah. Clubs work when you have a manager who inevitably thinks short-term, and you have executives who think medium-term and long-term.
Yeah.
We're in agreement on this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And before somebody pops up on social media, they will, and they'll say, oh, but Sir Alex made all his own moves and blah, blah, blah. He had total control. Like, Sir Alex is a one-off. Also, that was a different era at the start.
Yeah.
By the end, Sir Alex became Sir Alex, right? He wasn't Sir Alex when he started.
No.
And you can make the same point for the Arsene Wenger, David Dean thing, right?
Yeah.
And Wenger, by the way, for all his ills and wackiness, he always worked within a budget.
Yeah.
So at United, I think one of the one of the horrible mistakes that was made is every manager they've had, oh, what do you want? You want Marwan Fellaini? Here you go, Davy Moyes. You know what? Let's make sure that we buy him later so we can pay more money for him. Mourinho, you want this one and that one and that one, and we'll get Uncle George in the room? Sure. And then with Ten Hag, it became an absurdity where he and his friend Case Foss
And his son.
and his son Nigel, what a name, getting to this point where they sign all the same types of profiles of players. This won't happen. There has to be, for this to go forward, has to be accountability.
Yeah.
Wilcox, the analytics nerds. Barada does the negotiation. Ashworth has the big picture. Brailsford chimes in with his marginal gains. Ratcliffe says, let's do this. And then the Glazers write the check.
It does feel like a much better structured club right now. And I know it's only the beginning of this process and this new era in a way. But it feels certainly much more structured, balanced, competent than anything we'd seen before. Even the Sir Alex, as you said, David Gill era was just old school English football, really, let's be honest. Now it certainly looks much more efficient. Will it work? I don't know. It seems that United is such a special club that I'm not sure if even that works. But if that doesn't work, then I don't know where they go, because that has to work.
I had the privilege with sitting down several times with Sir Alex once, towards the end of his career, where he talked about how kind of the last 10 years of his time at Manchester United, he wasn't really coaching in the sense, it wasn't really taking training rather, right? He'd be at training, he'd let other people run the training, he'd watch, and he devoted a lot of his energy to recruitment, to speaking. So he was kind of like as much a director of football at that point. He had his trusted scouts and people who came to him. And I'm sure, look, he's Sir Alex, right? So everybody was kissing his butt at the time, right? Yeah. Which probably made things easier. Still had to make the tough decisions. So he wasn't this dude behind us, if you're watching on video, Ruben Amiron, who we assume, or indeed Ten Hag, will be doing 2-a-days, 3-a-days, and working in the video editing and stuff like that. So I think we have to also understand that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the good news if you're a United fan. In terms of what to expect from Amorim, and again, he's not been appointed yet. Our latest information is that the club, Sporting, who are, because they're listed on the stock exchange, they have to be transparent about this.
Yeah.
They have, I think, on Tuesday night, they announced that, the clause is there and it's been activated. That there's a notice period. As we record this on Thursday morning, correct me if I'm wrong here, you may have more up-to-date information. United still need to reach a deal with Amorim. That's not done yet. On top of that, Sporting are insisting that Amorim serves a notice period.
Yeah, 30 days. That's the...
Now, this notice period to me seems a little bit petty. Like, it doesn't make any sense why you would want somebody coaching your team in these games when he's leaving.
No, I guess to prepare for who's coming next, maybe, and they're very likely going to appoint the reserve coach. So maybe it's just buying you a bit more time. Maybe it doesn't have to be 30 days. Maybe it just could be the most imminent game. So, for example, they play City next week in the Champions League. I would rather have him on the bench against City than have the reserve coach that is just coming in and has no experience of Champions League football, and not that he has much, but he still has more than somebody who has zero. So maybe that's what they have in the back of their mind.
Amorim was also linked to Manchester City, who you brought up. That was because he works, still works, he's still there. Ugo Viana at Sporting. Ugo Viana is going to become the director of football at City next year when Chiki Begiristain leaves. Immediately, kind of the City sphere already letting it known, like, well, no, we don't. Amorim's very good, but we didn't, never really interested in him because
Pep is going to stay. Well, you don't
know. It's not the best. Well, first of all, I think they want to keep the door open for Pep deciding to stay. But also, they said, we don't have a squad that's suited to his football. And you mentioned this rigidity of the 3-4-3. I'm hesitant to use the word rigidity because he's a young coach. Just because he's done things one way, he can do things a different way later on. I mean, Carlo Ancelotti was the most rigid of managers when he started out, and he changed. But and then I thought to myself, wait, why is he not suited for it? I mean, we've seen City play with a de facto back three, right?
Yeah, true. I mean, I guess he's maybe more wing backs, and
you can sign a couple wing backs if that's the problem, right? You can. I mean, you have too many north-south wingers rather than kind of, two number 10s, if that's how you want to call it.
Yeah.
But they've also got that, right? Bernardo Silva and Foden are pretty good.
Can easily play
I
Narrow
mean,
tens.
if you need do they have a big Scandinavian center forward who
yeah.
scores a lot of goals? They do. So
Yeah,
this argument, do they have dynamic midfielders?
definitely not. They
Yeah.
can say anything
So
they
that's a
want.
nonsense, yeah.
They can say anything they want. You appoint Hugo Viana, who is Ruben Amorim's best friend, who have been such a strong partnership for many years now, very successfully for Sporting. Again, in Portugal, it doesn't mean that it would work everywhere, and especially in England, the best league in the world, anything you want. But you definitely can't tell me that it was not in the back of their mind to reunite Amorim and Viana at City next season.
I think we know it was in the back of their minds.
Yeah.
I also think they want to leave the door open for whatever Pep wants to do,
of
which
course.
I think only makes sense. All right, enough United. Let's talk. I never thought I'd say this.
Oh,
Ballon
you
d'Or.
love the Ballon d'Or now, hey? When there's a bit of argy-bargy, a bit of
Jules,
controversy, you
I
love
even
it.
wrote a whole column about it where I actually quoted you.
Yes.
Where you always say to me, well, you don't care, but the players care.
Exactly.
I think we've had absolute confirmation that the players care. Maybe a little bit too much would be my view. Absolutely extraordinary. On Monday, we all expected, so many people repeated, that Vinicius Jr. was going to win it.
Yeah.
We can get into the reasons why I think those predictions were so wrong with the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah.
In the end, at some point on Monday early afternoon, they find out that Real Madrid get wind that he has not won it. And so they cancel all their plans. They had a 5-hour show on Real Madrid TV.
Live show.
They had chartered a plane to bring not just Vinicius, but also all their other nominees.
Yeah,
I think it was
whole
8 people.
delegation,
Yeah, Arda Güler, Carletto Ancelotti, plus, of course, Carvajal and all these other
'cause
guys.
They won team of the season as well and manager of the season.
And they just decide to stay home.
Yeah.
Supposedly, because they're really upset. We did a lot of reporting, a lot of people in the Madridista sphere coming out and talking about an injustice. Look, I'm just going to say this. Leave aside the importance of the awards. You know how the mechanism of the award is. I do not understand how this decision to stay home makes sense. There's only one tiny area in which it makes sense. The reason it doesn't make sense is because you look like spoiled brats.
Yeah.
And it's not just Vini. Maybe he's upset. Like, somebody should take him aside and say, dude, just leave it. Don't care about this. Listen to Gab. But whatever. He really cares about this. Hey, his choice. But from the club's perspective, somebody, presumably Florentino, said, okay, fine. Vini's upset. None of us are going. Leaving aside the injustice towards, I don't think Dani Carvajal will ever go to a Ballon d'Or ceremony ever again, unless he befriends I Show Speed. All these other people who deserve recognition, who had tremendous seasons, Real Madrid players.
Yeah, Jude Bellingham,
among others.
3.
You make yourself seem really, really petty. You make it seem like suddenly this Ballon d'Or, which is 100 journalists in 100 countries sending in their ballots, all of a sudden is so important. I think you've kind of damaged your own image of rising above, no?
Yeah, really sad, I think. Super disrespectful, I think. But the line was, we were not respected by the Ballon d'Or because Vini didn't win it, so we don't go where we are not
It's not
respected.
the Ballon d'Or is a piece of metal, right? It's not the Ballon d'Or. You can say we were disrespected by the 100 journalists around the world who didn't vote for us. Is this the point you're making?
I don't know, but it was very tight between him and Rodri. Both of them very worthy of the Ballon d'Or. They both had great season. They both are great players. Maybe the only thing I would say was that maybe at some point somewhere somebody told Real Madrid, I don't think you plan all of that. You plan a 5-hour live show. You buy the rights of the ceremony because you have to pay for it. If you don't think that he's going to win it, and that's the thing, because you don't plan all of that until you know that it's obviously there.
Okay, like the rights of the ceremony, I don't know how much they cost. I mean,
don't know. No,
Man City had them too. I watched a bit of their live stream. It was me and 30,000 other people. It's Jolien Lescott and somebody else, and Izzy Christensen in the studio, like whatever.
Point. Yeah, but still, it's this is still. I think you put those plans because I guess you think that he's going to win it, and
I'd be even surprised if they didn't give them the rights to the live stream for free, because frankly, like if you want to promote this, if you want, the Ballon d'Or is about promoting France football and whatever, among other things, creating the hype. Certainly I would have given the rights away to Real Madrid for free so that they can show it to their audience, right?
It doesn't work like that.
But
so you pay for them, but still, Like, yeah, I think he's very disappointing
Okay.
from them anyway.
Could there be, I'm just going to float this theory out there, that actually this was a clever thing because we're talking about this. We're talking about Vini not going. We're talking about the disrespect aspect. We're not talking by the fact that they had their backsides handed to them by Barcelona in the Clásico last weekend. So without the Ballon d'Or this week and with no midweek game, and as we'll see later with the Valencia's game looking like it's going to be canceled at the weekend, we would have had 10 days of Clásico kind of looking back and why we're Real Madrid so poor. Did you think this is some sort of strategy?
If he had won it, that would have been the same. It would have been the same effect on the Clásico. We would have talking about the Clásico because of the Ballon d'Or. So,
but if he had not won it, and they'd all been there and politely applauded Rodri, we would have gone immediately back to the Clásico and talked about it.
There would be still the same outrage from Brazil and everything that he hadn't won it.
We're going to break this down a little bit more further because there's conspiracies, there's nonsense. I have an excellent column up on the website just for your consideration, all about this. I want to go back to something which I thought was interesting, which is that we all took it for granted that Vinicius won. And it's interesting because one of the Ballon d'Or voters, Paolo Condolfo, from Sky Italia, he was on TV and he told me, and he didn't tell me, he told anybody who was watching, that sort of in September, in early September, some very in the know people went to him and said, "Oh, Vinicius has won the Ballon d'Or. Vini's going to win the Ballon d'Or." And he said, "That's odd because the voting window," he revealed, which I don't know if he was supposed to reveal because the voting window isn't normally made public, was between September 4th and September 30th.
Yeah.
So he's like, I haven't even cast my vote yet.
Yeah.
And you're telling me the guy's already won, right?
Yeah.
How does that work, right? But this took on a life of its own. I saw somebody on social media saying that, they backed Rodri at 12-1 during the Euros to win the Ballon d'Or. And all of this totally clashes with what our friend Vincent Garcia, the guy who runs it for France Football, what he said in that interview with the Times when he talked about his blockchain code and how, he was the only person in the universe who could access it and how on the day he would write all the names on the envelope. So clearly both things can't be true. There is no way that he's the only person in the world who knows who won, until the names get written on the envelope.
Yeah.
But then Real Madrid knows 6 hours earlier.
And apparently we're told by City too. That's what is reported in Spain. So clearly City and Rodri knew way before Monday night. maybe they did, maybe they didn't tell Real Madrid, we don't know. But so
with the benefit of hindsight, I look back and I always think these predictions are silly because we can all say who we think should win based on the 3 criteria, which I'll remind you are individual performance, team performance, and kind of character and so on. And personality. We're guessing how these 100 people from very different countries are going to vote. But with hindsight, I look back and I say, all right, well, the award is for the 23-24 season, right? Vinicius missed a big chunk at the start of the season.
With injury.
He really wasn't good until the second half of the season when he was really, really good.
Yeah.
He was really, really good on a team which had a bunch of really high achievers who carried Real Madrid at different times during the season because it was Jude Bellingham, it was Toni Kroos, it was Antonio Rudiger. I'm not saying Antonio Rudiger is better than Vini, please, nobody get angry. But in terms of who carried them, and Carvajal as well, of course, coming up with those big goals. So I think that does split the vote a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
And the other thing is the season before, 22-23, Rodri won everything, right, with Manchester City.
Trouble,
I think in that season, but then voters had to give it to Messi because they felt compelled because it's Messi.
Well,
Messi wins the World Cup.
You didn't have to, no. But
No, but realistically, right? A lot of people, but I think a lot of people said, oh, I really would like to give it to Rodri, but I kind of have to give it to Messi because the GOAT winning the World Cup, blah, blah, blah. Does it sell the argument, all the hype? So I think some of those people then leaned more towards Rodri this year because it was almost like 2 years of achievement. And then the Copa America. This dude doesn't show up.
Yeah,
Rodri,
disappointing.
Rodri is, for better or worse, and you may disagree, but effectively, given you have a Gimpy Pedri and you have, Morata, everybody makes fun of, you've got the French center backs, and you have a 16-year-old at the time, Rodri's the face of the Spain team until the final.
Yeah,
right?
he is.
and they win the Euros.
Yeah, yeah,
Hey,
and it
so
was
with
good.
hindsight,
It was really
why
good.
were we also sure? It was because people were telling us. And why were people telling us
No,
when they
it's not
couldn't
so
have
much
known?
that. It's not so much that. I think it's because traditionally the Ballon d'Or is won by forwards. We know that because people are more likely or keen. I don't know what the word is. The right word is to vote for forwards
Then to
and
recognize a
strikers.
defensive midfielder. That's what you're saying.
No, I'm just saying that I think we thought that Vinicius was going to win it because of that. Because historically, there are forwards who win this 90% of the
Yeah.
time.
So
So
I think a lot of this actually can be explained with two factors why forwards won it so much in the past. And I'm hoping it's going to change. One is that the jury keeps changing. So last time around, it was 180 odd FIFA nations, including, I'm guessing, the bottom 80 people who watch YouTube clips and not much else and maybe aren't that invested, don't consume as much high-end football as most of the top 100.
we don't know that.
Yeah, we kind of do. I mean, we
How?
kind of do. We know these
How
people.
do we? Why?
What?
Why was the country ranked 121 in the world? Not much. Not the guy who votes, the journalist, doesn't watch as much football as the team that is 105 in the world. How does that work?
First of all, neither the 121, 105 get a
Okay,
vote
so 99 and 101.
now. Okay, well, first of all, I'm not comparing 99 to 101.
No, but
I'm
like-
talking about if you reduce it to 100, it weights
Yeah.
the ones who are in the thick of it, who get to watch more football, who are more invested in football, who are more from footballing nations. It weighs their votes more, right? Because they represent a larger
I'm
percentage.
not sure about that.
But that's
anyway,
what your
yeah.
friend, that's what Vincent Garcia said. He said,
I
like,
don't
that's
know,
why
but
he
like
cut
the
out.
team 100 in the world. Like, how are they more invested in football than?
Because the guy is in the number 100 in the world, I believe, at the time of the vote was Kazakhstan. And that guy is in Kazakhstan. He's not traveling around to Champions League and Copa America games. He's
Yeah,
presumably covering the Kazakhstan league.
but you can also watch every European
I'm sure
game
he
like
does
we do.
on television, and he's more removed from it. Anyway, this is just a working
Yeah,
theory.
yeah. No. It's
And
just
the other
that.
factor, the reason people say, "Oh, forwards have always won it," let's not forget the two guys who happen to be forwards and happen to be goats
True.
won it 13 times in recent
Together.
memory.
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
think that skews us. And
But
I
even
think,
before that, even
Before that,
it was forward.
and I go back to the original Ballon d'Or, my issue with it. Before that, the people who voted for it were Ballon d'Or correspondents, right? Were France football correspondents. In my excellent column, I go back to one of my earliest memories of Ballon d'Or is the 1987 Ballon d'Or, won by Ruud Gullit,
Would hold it.
where somebody named Sokol Kushta, do you know who he is? Oh, I found a footballer Jules doesn't know. I didn't know he was either, but I remember him from seeing him. He got votes because the France football apparently had a correspondent in Albania, and he says, well, I decided to vote for Sokol Kushta, who was a striker for Flamurtari. I even found a YouTube highlight of him. He's a different universe. People back
Yeah.
then judged only saw very little football, and they judged on little things. I think today, hopefully, we can see more. Leaving aside the strikers are probably more valuable and whatever, but we can see more. And I don't think I think Rodri's going to open the door to more midfielders, maybe even defenders winning this award. Maybe even Trent.
Yeah, I
one
hope
day.
so. Yeah, maybe Trent certainly want to. I just think the line that people say about football won when Rodri won the Ballon d'Or. Like Vini is a wonderful player, and football is also the style of football that he plays. With the dribbling and with the pace and with having
Right.
fun and the street football side of it. And Rodri is an incredible player, a genius of his own. Like Vini is, different profile, different players. But I just thought at times it felt that some people were clearly happy that Rodri won it, and he deserves it. We said it was great. I said before I would have voted for him. But it felt that he also went a little bit too much on the other side. Vini didn't win it, so we started saying, this is football, it's so good, it's this, it's the Iniesta Ballon d'Or that he never won, the Xavi Ballon d'Or
Right.
that he never won. I was like, come on, please. Look, it's great for Rodri. It's a shame for Vini. He will win it another season, and so will be other Real Madrid players, and Real Madrid will be at peace with it, and they will travel next year when him or Kylian or Jude win it. It won't be a problem. Everything will be forgotten. But yeah, I just thought as well he went a little bit too far on the other side.
Yeah, like I said, this side of what you said, I agree. I don't care because
No,
it's
I
a
know you
stupid
don't.
award,
I
as
know
you
you
said.
don't.
I'm interested in the machinations and devilry.
Yeah,
I want to
yeah,
address
yeah.
some of these things. Again, and the other thing about the people on the jury, right? They're like Supreme Court justices. They're appointed by one man, the editor in chief of France Football. He puts them on the jury. They get to stay on the jury until they either retire, in which case they get to actually name a successor, right? And I don't know, maybe in some cases it's their nephew, maybe it's their dog, I don't know, until they die. Okay, not much you can do there. Or until Vincent Garcia decides, I don't like the way you voted, you're biased, like he did with Kike Wolf, our colleague from ESPN, who I mentioned on Monday. He didn't like the fact that he had given put four Argentines in his top 5 when they won the World Cup. Boom. He's gone, replaced by somebody else. We have to understand this. It's like the Supreme Court, except there is no congressional approval.
It's his award. It's his France Football Award.
That's what I mean.
So,
but, okay. And this takes me to my final point on the. Well, actually, no, I got another point before that. The conspiracy thing. Oh, UEFA are punishing. This is one of my favorite things. UEFA are punishing Real Madrid because of the Super League. Okay, so if I'm UEFA, right, and this is the first year they have an agreement with I think it's the Amorim group that owns France Football. I'm going to punish Real Madrid by elevating who? Manchester City, the club that sued me, the club that I've been going after for years over financial fair play violations. You genuinely think that it's good business for UEFA to go and elevate Manchester?
I don't even know why you're wasting your time talking about this.
Because this is the stuff that people put out there. I mean, I am completely fascinated and appalled by this. And I don't know. I thought this was extraordinary. And I'll leave you with this thought, which I shared in my column, but I think it's significant of the day and age in which we live. So we're in the UK, right? Pretty big media market, would you say?
Yeah.
Pretty good football league. I wasn't going to watch this. I started hearing rumors about the Vinicius, and I said, all right, let me go and find this on television, right? So I go to my Magic satellite dish. I do not get French television on mine, but I get television from,
I get on mine.
If I could expense it, I probably would. Besides, I have the Ligue 1 pass now. I don't need that. Anyway, so it's nowhere to be found on my television.
Okay.
All right, I'll go to the internet. I go to YouTube. I'm like, somebody must be streaming it. And I go on the live streams, and I see Manchester City are streaming it, and I Show Speed is streaming it. So
I don't know who I Show Speed is.
You do know who I Show Speed is.
I know, but I don't know why we're talking about I Show Speed on this show.
Because these are the people who care about the Ballon d'Or, right? So he's there because he's a celebrity and whatever.
Yeah,
that's fine.
He's invited.
I assume he's invited. So I assumed that he'd have a live stream of the ceremony where I could see the people on stage, and he'd be in a corner talking over it, commenting, making his jokes, his faces, the stuff he does on his live streams. No, the actual live stream is him sitting in a chair next to Ibai, another live streamer, with a GoPro trained at them, but they can't talk, right? Because the ceremony's going on, right? So they clap, they make some faces. They're not actually saying anything. And I thought, my God, the world has eaten itself. I am so open-minded to all of this. I don't mind you want to do your stunts. You want people pay you while you're gaming and stuff. But how is it entertaining looking at I Show Speed making faces and Ibai with his beard, and those guys don't say anything?
I don't know.
Because they can't say anything.
No. I don't know.
And they got 10 times as many views as the Man City live stream, which
I guess they were talking, right? It was
Julian Lescott and Izzy Christensen talking. Yes, they were actually speaking. I don't know what it says about attitudes towards the Ballon d'Or in the UK versus other countries where it's bigger. Oh, one last thing. I saw a lot of people saying a lot of dumb things, frankly, about this award. In Brazil, and this is another thing about why I think this award is as important as the importance we place on it, right? And I find it surprising. I've always said this, that these people need approval. I guess we all do. It's a human thing. We all want approval, right? From the outside, I would have thought, dude, you won the Champions League. You were a key player in winning the Champions League. You might win the World Cup. These are things that you achieve yourself. Mm-hmm. It's not approval that comes from other people. And yet, obviously, this really matters. It got to the point where in Brazil, people were saying that it's some sort of racist backlash towards Vini. And I'm like, look at the 100 countries. Does this stack up? I don't like the way this award then gets turned into something bigger, because Vini does have to face a racist backlash, and he has faced it. And to think that they're going to use an award to punish him, I think it belittles his battle against racism, if anything. All right, Jules, enough Ballon d'Or. How about some quick hits instead?
Let's go, Gab.
Cannot believe we're leading with this League Cup nonsense, but Jules,
You love it.
Manchester City with a very strong lineup.
Yeah.
I mean, you had Riley,
Strong.
McAtee, and Ortega, obviously, but the rest are all very, very
you had
legit.
Phil Foden at force number 9. So
Why can't he be a real number 9? Who knows? They get knocked out by Spurs. So we have to talk about them. We have to show Spurs some love.
Yeah, because they won 4 League Cups in a row, City before. So that's a big shock to lose like that before the quarterfinals. I guess they got done early by a Timo Werner goal. That doesn't happen very often. And then a shot from Sarr that I think Ortega should have saved. But I thought City played well. They lacked a bit of cutting edge. Maybe the fact that Haaland, who was sat on the bench the whole night, didn't even got up to go and warm up. Why would you take him down to London for that if you're not going to use him? I didn't really get that
Is
from
this the
Pep.
same Haaland who snubbed the Ballon d'Or ceremony because you didn't win?
His mate was winning the
just
title for
joking.
Malmo.
I
You
thought
know,
that was
that's
awesome.
priorities, obviously.
We
in
joke,
life.
Haaland did not snub the
yeah.
ceremony. But it was interesting
big
because
defeats.
Pep had said that, this was not a priority for them. It was the least of their priority. I thought we were going to see all those guys with the double-barreled last names and said no.
No, yeah,
He
I
wanted
guess.
to win.
Yeah, he wants to win, but he still looked quite relaxed the fact that he didn't win. Though. Milan fall at home to Napoli on Tuesday, Gab, with Theo Hernandez and Tijani Reinders suspended. We explained it on the show. Was it really necessary for Paulo Fonseca to also leave out Rafael Leao and Christian Pulisic?
No,
It
it
felt
wasn't.
weird.
It felt weird. I don't know if this is maybe what you might call a scheduled loss. I hope it wasn't the case. I don't think Milan played badly, or if he really believes in sort of like the big family and all these guys are equal. But yeah, Okafor and Chukwueze aren't as good right now as Leao and Pulisic at their best.
Yeah.
Leao played the last half hour. I thought he did
You
a
saw
couple
the
good things.
difference.
I don't quite get it. Fonseca's getting absolute pelters right now, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, look, you lost to Antonio Conte, Napoli, and Conte's a guy you could have had." I think Conte would have been 1,000% the wrong choice for Milan for many different reasons, which I've explained before. But shout out to Napoli; they keep cruising.
Such a Conte win. So early goal, just another one just before the break, and then you defend.
Shut up shop. More League Cup. Chelsea's B team lose at Newcastle 2-0. Jules, not a surprise.
No, not surprised that Maresca played his B team like he does in Europe, for example. But it's okay when you play in Europe against the team they face in the Conference League. And when you face a strong, almost full strength Newcastle team, then it's obviously not the same. And again, early goals, really good Newcastle with the ball. At St. James's Park as well, very good Bruno Guimaraes. I just think there was not enough there for Chelsea to go and win this game or to even come back into the game. Would they care? I don't think so, right? Or should they have cared a bit more? About
I think they
domestic
do
cup?
care if they want to break into. I don't think you want to get this early in the season. You want to send the message that I'm not looking at you and you have no chance of breaking back into the team. I don't think Maresca's doing that.
No.
You still had what I find interesting is Enzo included in this group, which
He started in Europe, as well.
exactly. I mean,
Last
and
week.
obviously he's been
Bench,
dropped in the last two games.
yeah.
So I wonder if there's something evolving there.
Yeah, maybe. Inter roll past Empoli 3-0 as Lautaro Martinez becomes the club's highest goal-scoring foreign player. Gab, it helps to play against 10 men for over an hour.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
it was still
And
0-0
and
until
it was
the red
0-0
card.
at the time. Look, Inter aren't as good as they were last year, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's weird. I saw some stats. They press more, but they press less intensely, which suggests to me that they're getting a little bit older.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think the main thing is no Hakan Çalhanoğlu.
Yeah.
Early we went on and on about Rodri and what he does. Hakan Çalhanoğlu for this Inter side is really, really important.
Yeah.
When Zielinski or Asllani come in, they're just different sorts of players. Jamal Musiala backs a hat trick and Bayern stomp all over Mainz in the German Cup. Jules, he's pretty good.
It's very good. I mean, they were 1-0 up after 30 seconds or something like that. And there was no game. There was just no game after that. They were far too good for Mainz. And he's far too good for Mainz too. And I think when he was injured, you felt it. You could see, even in terms of key moments in games, that they were missing him. So it's good for them that he's back to his best, really. Juventus have to come from behind to draw 2-2 against Parma on Wednesday night. Gab, the Thiago Motta roller coaster continues. One really good performance, one not so good.
We praise him to high heaven after the comeback against Inter. And now this was a really poor performance. I thought Parma played really well, and they have this guy Boni, and behind
Paris
them,
born and bred.
of course he is, and of course behind them people like Dennis Mann. There's a lot of guys there with quality, but still you should do better. Motta again making some curious choices. I don't know that this was a game for Danilo to start, and Danilo was poor, just because he had a rough time at the weekend.
Yeah.
Good news, Juve. Teun Koopmeiners coming on as a sub.
Yeah.
Your big summer signing is there. Good news also for American Juve fans.
Tim Weah.
Timmy Weah and Weston McKennie on the score sheet.
Up,
and combining for the first goal.
Yeah, exactly.
From bad to worse for Nuri Sahin at Borussia Dortmund. Jules, they lose in injury time to Wolfsburg and are out, OUT out of the DFB Pokal.
Yeah. Is that it then? Can you? I mean, this was when we talked about him on Monday and we said, okay, how bad the weekend was. And surely at some point something has to change, and you see no change. This was a usual Dortmund, Nuri Sahin. I mean, not just Sahin, because managers before him struggled with the same things. I just don't think he can turn this around at all.
I don't think you can sack somebody based on going out of the German Cup
but it's
when
not
you
just
give
that.
up the goal in the 117th
They're seventh
minute.
in the league.
But you have to look at the full
Yeah,
picture.
exactly.
And I'd be surprised if they weren't looking around.
Atalanta making 4 wins in a row after beating Monza 2-0 and moving up to third in Serie A. I think 6 points behind Napoli, Gab, or 5 points behind Napoli. But this was far from comfortable.
No, it wasn't. Monza, I thought, really played really well, kind of really had them. But again, substitutions change games. Atalanta have so much depth.
Their bench are always good.
They send on Lazar Samardzic, who I don't think has had a massive impact so far since coming over. He hasn't been getting in. But boom, that left foot that you and Tor Christian Carlson went on and on about when we were talking about when we did our draft.
Remember
that?
Yeah, that's true.
How about that? He scores a goal to send them on their way. Ethan Nwaneri gets a start and scores as Arsenal win at Preston North End in the League Cup. 3-0, I think it was. Jules, I know he's only 17. But to me, he looks ready to be a regular in the Premier League too.
Yeah, I hear you, Gabby. I hear you. I agree with you. And sometimes I just don't. I'm just like, let's see. But then would you take a risk if you start? Okay. Doesn't have to be. I mean, this was the Preston game that it was easy. Arsenal made it easy. They scored early. There was not much to it. But I thought he was really good in that game. I thought every time he'd come on late in the Premier League lately, he looked good too. He's got an amazing left foot, there's no doubt. He's very strong for somebody his age. So you're right. Maybe he's ready.
I mean, I think he's right. Like, I think the reasons you wouldn't do it are reasons that we can't know, which is if he has a bad game, how does he deal with it psychologically?
Yeah.
Does he have the maturity? Look, nobody can know this. You don't know this. I don't know this. The only people who can assess it are the people who work with him every day. And some players need more time. It's just because
that's
certainly,
true.
but in terms of the actual skills and the athleticism and the intelligence on the pitch,
Then,
I mean, he's right there, right?
Would you start him away at Newcastle on Saturday, for example? Early kickoff Saturday.
No, I wouldn't because I'm conservative that way.
No. But I agree with you on that. So I think you're right. I think he might be ready, but maybe just pick the right game to give him that. Real Madrid's game away to Valencia on Saturday is likely to be postponed, Gavi, following the flooding in Andalusia and the southeast of the country, which has left nearly 100 people dead.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is just awful. I mean, I don't want to make this political and talk about climate change, but it's pretty obvious what's going on. We had Bologna and Milan postponed just recently, and because of the congested calendar, who knows when this game is going to be replayed? I probably not for another 3 months.
Yeah.
Bayer Leverkusen bounced back with a 3-0 Pokal win over Elversberg as Patrick Schick scores twice. Jules, will Granit Xhaka be a little bit happier this time?
I'm not so sure, Gab. I'm not so sure at all. Simply because of the opposition that they faced. It was far too easy for them. They play Stuttgart this weekend on Friday night, I believe. And
it is Friday night. That is a really big
massive
game. I think that is where we'll know where they are.
Yeah, exactly. What time is it, Gabby?
It's Textor time!
Exactly. And Bloomberg report that his Eagle Football Group need to repay some $300 million. JT, what's going on?
Okay, so look, this is a bad thing. So let's start with a good thing.
Okay.
Botafogo are top of the league in Brazil.
Right.
I think they're 7 points clear.
They were last season and then they collapsed.
Okay, no, but they're not collapsing this time.
Okay.
I mean, unless the whole plot against them, blah, blah, blah. But we can't go there because, he's got legal action going on there.
Yeah.
So a couple of things here. This is the Eagle Football Group. It's not just him, right? This
No.
Michel Kang that we hear is a billionaire who runs these are his business partners.
Yeah.
But they did borrow $300 million from Ares, which is a fund which has stakes in Real Madrid. I think they have a small stake in Chelsea as well. They're going to have to pay this money back. For me, the implication is if he needs to raise this money quickly, he's got to sell his shares at Palace.
Yeah.
And so the other shareholders are in a really, really strong position. And I was wondering too, people suggested, the Athletic reporting that Ares weren't too happy that he was trying to buy Everton too, because that would have really, really stretched him. And in the end, $900 million for Lyon. A lot of money.
Yeah.
Guess who's back? Back again. Anthony Martial, or Tony Marshall, as our colleague Rob Dawson calls him. He's on the score sheet after nearly a year.
I know. Scored his first goal yesterday in the Greek Cup for AEK Athens, where he plays now, against Aris, 1-0, so the winning goal just before the break. It was his first start as well. He played 15 minutes and half an hour in 2 league games before. I mean, I'm happy for him. Obviously, we are happy for him. I know we made fun of him before, and I just don't know what happened. We've said it many times before. He was so good when he was younger. So one of the best I've ever seen at 15, 16 years old. And
I remember getting a call from an agent who brings a lot of players from France to the UK when he was 16 and saying, like, he's well ahead of where Thierry Henry was at 16.
He was an absolute freak, man. But yeah.
Mbappe level at that age?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what happened. And Gab, Al Nassr out of the Saudi Cup, and Cristiano Ronaldo had a rough night.
Yeah, so they lost to Al Tawoun, who are not one of those clubs that are stacked with super talented players. In fact, they're coached by Rodolfo Arruabarrena. Shout out to him. Tight game, 96-minute penalty to Al Nassr, and Cristiano misses it. He puts it over the bar. He hits some kid in the stands who, okay, because it's a child, I'm not going to make fun of him. If it was an adult, I would have been like, dude, you're standing there holding your phone so you can film Cristiano's penalty from behind the goal.
Yeah.
The ball actually knocks the phone out of his hand, right? You're a child, you don't know any better. I've seen so many adults do this, and I'm going to say this now. You're all freaking losers.
Loads of people do that. It's a memory you keep. You were there in the stadium, you see the
Not
goal.
for a penalty.
Anything.
Come on,
you see
man.
Cristiano score, Messi score.
The dude's in Saudi. He sees Cristiano every week. Come on. By the way, speaking of, Al Nassr will need to be cheered up. Is that why you're flying over to Saudi Arabia to cheer them up?
Big derby on Friday against Al Hilal. So that's massive.
How
massive
about that?
Al Nassr against Al Hilal. So yeah, it'd be fun.
Marco Rose mixes it up, but Leipzig beats St. Pauli 4-2. Jules, I guess they can win without the SOS as well.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that front two of Poulsen and Silva, I was like, my God, yeah, they're there. They're still there because we talk so much about Šeško and Openda and then Xavi Simons and his injury, by the way. We're still waiting to know exactly how bad it is or not so bad or when could he come back. But yeah, you win and that's the most important, I guess, because you've given game time to the players who, like Andre Silva, who doesn't play that much really so far this season.
It's very Red Bullish, I think, to have this really deep squad with the only players. Because look, we can call it the PSN, right? Poulsen, Silva, and Antonio Nusa, right? No, but I mean,
that's true.
Obviously, Silva and Poulsen are veterans, so it's a little bit different. And Poulsen, I think, is part of the furniture. I don't think that guy's ever gonna that guy's ever gonna retire. But I find that part interesting. The transition, giving these guys minutes. I think because they're going to need somebody that's going to take Xavi Simons minutes at least while he's out.
Yeah, that's true. UEFA and FIFPro Europe have announced a new memorandum of understanding that will see the Players' Union take a seat on the executive committee. Yeah, this is quite big, no?
So I think this is important for two reasons, without getting too boring about this. One is FIFPro, of course, have taken legal action against FIFA over the Club World Cup and too many games and failure to consult. And now here are UEFA saying, yeah, guys, come join us, right? And they get a seat on the executive committee. It is, I think, an advisory observer seat, and obviously it's just one of many, so it's not like they can really control things. But it is interesting because this is a players' union. I remember talking to the guy who ran FIFPro for many years, Theo Van Segelen, saying that, FIFA actually offered FIFPro, this is like 20 years ago, they had offered, it was Blatter at the time, they had offered them a seat on the FIFA executive committee as it was then. And he said no, because a union has to be outside. A union can't be part of management for a union to do its job. But I think what we're realizing is FIFPro Europe and FIFA in general, they're not unions. They are an advocacy group. They're an umbrella organization of unions. They can't tell people what to do. They can't call. I mean, they can ask for strike action, but it's down to the individual thing. So is it good that the players have a voice? Yes, if they have a voice and if they use it on the executive committee. If this is just part of UEFA trying to undermine FIFA and the Club World Cup and it's just political pettiness, not so good.
Yeah.
FIFA have put Arsene Wenger in charge of a new task force to look at fixture congestion.
Oh, yes.
Jules, is this meaningful or just hot air where he travels around the world, talks to people, and says, well, you know.
Yeah, I mean, will he want to have the World Cup every 2 years like he used to before? Is that like the fixture congestion?
How dare you? How dare you attack the professor?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess the good thing, the way I see it, is good that they look into this at least, and they
because they only realize now.
Yeah, true. But even if they pretend to, at least it seems that there's a bit of movement towards players' welfare, fixture congestion, don't play too much, etc.
Their problem is that whenever now FIFA have painted themselves in the corner, right? Because whenever they bring up fixture congestion, we're like, the Club World Cup.
Calendar. Yeah,
But you know what? Like the slot that the Club World Cup occupies was a Confederations Cup before. So there were these players who were playing in the Confederations Cup, players from big countries, because that's what we care about and that's what people talk about. You had, the eight of the biggest countries. I mean, it's always 8 of the biggest, but you had the World Cup winner, the winner of South America, the winner of Europe. So you usually had Mexico or the US. So you had like a significant number of countries. Fixture congestion is something that goes way beyond the Club World Cup. It goes down to the number of league games that there are. So other than Wenger writing a report, which I'm going to go on a limb that in the end, he's going to conclude that actually the problem is there's too many club games, not international football.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then nobody's going to listen to him and it's not going to affect anything. I think this is the way it's headed.
Yeah, probably. It sounds like that. Yeah. The Red Bull empire could be expanding to Serie A. According to reports in Italy, Gab, they've had 3 different meetings already to buy Torino.
Which makes sense because Torino's nickname is Toro, which means bull. Yes. And they have it in their symbol.
The marketing is there already.
The marketing is already there. I'm surprised.
Perfect.
Surprised it took them this long. So the reason I think this is interesting is that obviously for all the Red Bull talk, they only have one club in a major league, right? And that's Leipzig. And with all the love in the world for Leipzig, I'm not going to say it's a backwater of a city and a backwater part of a large country.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think certainly Torino, being in Turin, in Serie A, is a completely different outpost. And it's certainly potentially on a par, if not great, certainly in terms of history, them and Leipzig.
Absolutely.
It's not even, it's like, Torino 7 times Serie A winners. It's not even a contest. I find this fascinating. I think Serie A clubs are one of the reason they have so many foreign owners is this is one of the few countries where you can still probably invest and not get ripped off, and you still have the critical mass of 60 million people and blah, blah, blah. I am not a fan of what they did in Leipzig. I have a ton of admiration for what they do football-wise. The way they've behaved over the years, not so much. But it would certainly bring a lot of excitement to Serie A if they were to get involved and start kind of building an outpost there. Super Mario Balotelli is back, Jules. He was a free agent. Now he is signed for Genoa.
He's 34, Gab, so he obviously hasn't played since the end of last season when he was in Turkey, where he did quite well. 7 goals in 60 games for
10 starts, I believe.
Yeah, Adama Demirspor. He said he's still hungry, he's still fit, he's ready to go. Genoa obviously lost Retegui in the summer, who went to Atalanta. They need goals, they need leadership, maybe.
Because that's who you get leadership from. Yeah.
Well,
I guess born leader.
Certainly in terms of name and experience, the guy has to.
I mean,
it could be a car crash too.
Yeah, I don't see him moving the needle at all. And I also wonder when you're owned by 777 and storm is coming.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. But look, maybe he just said like, hey guys, I'll, pay me by appearance. Maybe he's not costing very much. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like seeing him play because I like seeing him smile and I like seeing him do special things on the pitch, which very occasionally he does.
Yeah. UEFA will commit 1 billion euros between now and 2030 to develop the women's game, Gab. And they have a nifty name for the project as well.
Yes, Unstoppable. I think that's a
great.
good name.
That's
right?
catchy.
It's catchy.
Yeah.
Look, 1 billion is a big round number between now and 2030. I think that's works out to what, like 160, 170 odd million in funding.
Yeah.
I don't know how much more that is now than what they give now. I think maybe it's twice as much.
Yeah.
So it's good. I like the fact that their main goal isn't the elite club game, which is what some people advocate for. Although they want to get to the point where they have 6 fully professional women's leagues, but they want to make this the most played sport by women in every single European country. I imagine it already is in many of them.
Yeah.
But certainly the most played team sport in every European country. That is their challenge. They want to make the game sustainable, which is really important because all these big clubs who have women's teams, they're all generally funded by the men's team, and they've driven self-sustaining women's clubs in many important countries, like England and Germany. They've driven them, and Sweden. They've driven them out of business. So they have to look at this model. As I've said before, I think on the commercial side, the model for women's football maybe could include some sort of expanded Super League where at least you have likes for like. So if Barcelona and Lyon want to spend a ton of money on their women's team, they can compete and maybe even, make a loss or a marketing expense year after year, then they can do it competing against Manchester City and Arsenal and Chelsea and the other clubs in this country do it, right?
Yeah.
Rather than having big clubs just beat up on little clubs every week. But I do think what we do know is the women's international game, we know makes money and we know can be successful. And I think they need to promote that. I hope they really take this opportunity to look at, okay, where do we want to go with this? What is the pathway forward? And it can't just be mimicking the men's game. Napoli and Kvicha Kvaratskhelia continue to talk extension. Now, Jules, he's under contract until 2027.
Yeah.
He's only making around 1.6 million euros net, which is about 3 million euros gross, which is about 50,000 pounds a week. If you're English, I like to think in weekly wages.
Yeah, you like the weekly wages.
Back in the days of flat caps and people working down the factories and pre-decimalization. Anyway, that is not a lot of money. He's got to be the most underpaid player in Europe.
Absolutely. I guess it's also down to what he wants to do, because if he wants to leave, like he was kind of hinting, or certainly his dad was hinting last summer when PSG came knocking and Napoli vetoed any move, not just to PSG.
How serious were PSG last summer?
I think they would have been. So I think they were serious, but because the door never opened, they just didn't go into.
Would they have signed him instead of Desiree Doué?
Yeah, probably. They would have put more money than the 50 million they spent for Doué, but yeah, the wide player that they wanted was him. It would have played, I guess, on the left where Barcola is. So I'm not sure in terms of progress for your Speedy Barcola favorite. But yeah, but if he wants to leave, then that's the problem. He wants probably more money, but then he will have to extend his contract, which will make it more difficult for him to leave, obviously, unless he put a release clause in, which they might also do.
Because that worked out so well with Osimhen's release
exactly.
clause.
But then he can't stay on 50k a week. He's worth so much more than that already. So I don't know. Maybe I would suspect that he would extend and stay for a bit longer, and things are working well now.
Napoli reportedly willing to bump it up to 12 million gross, which again, 200k a week in sterling. Apparently he wants more than that. Apparently he's at 16 million. Maybe they can meet somewhere in the middle with bonuses, but I think they have to put a release. If they want 12 million, he'd be stupid not to take the deal without a release clause.
Sure.
I mean,
completely. The Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia said that they are cutting international investment gap from 30% of their portfolio to 20%. Is this big, especially if you're a Newcastle fan?
I think, I don't think it's quite that big, unless you're thinking of selling Newcastle, because obviously you have these holdings. If you're going to get from 30 to 20, it doesn't just mean you're not going to invest more. It means you're going to divest yourself or sell some of your assets. The way they run Newcastle so far has actually, we've noted this, has been pretty conservative. This isn't like Abramovich's Chelsea or Man City when Abu Dhabi first took over, right? They've been running it. They've been keeping to the profit and sustainability rules. I find it interesting. What does this mean for football, right? And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think this is tied to the World Cup in Saudi Arabia. So some of this money maybe that will be spent domestically in Saudi, where it has another impact, right? If you spend the money to build stadiums and infrastructure and whatever locally in Saudi, then you're boosting the Saudi economy and kind of creating jobs and whatever. And I think that in the football side, and the football is just a tiny part of this. PFF are enormous. I think that's going to be how things shake out, but it is very significant. I think that they're going from 30 to 20% because these sovereign wealth funds, the Norwegian sovereign wealth fund, which nobody talks about, because the Norwegians, I like to say, are the Qataris of Europe, in a weird looking glass sort of way, is even bigger, right? When these people decide not to invest in big companies, all of a sudden there's less of this liquidity out there, and it affects everybody.
Yeah.